think the whole inflation scenario is still a matter of concern.
And inflation has hurt the poor, India's middle class, the vulnerable classes, and governments must do everything to bring down inflation.
Food inflation would continue to remain hazy in terms of what implications the lower monsoon has on the overall food prices and on overall the agricultural commodities.
India's inflation for the month of June has eased unexpectedly, but continuing to remain well above the 7% mark. Hello and welcome to We Mean Business. I'm Shweta Rajpal Kohli. On the show today, we discuss the state of the Indian economy, the way forward with regard to inflation, interest rates at a time when the slowdown has become a big cause of worry. Also coming up later on the show will be a look at President Obama's comments on the Indian economy and some reactions from both our guests and political voices that have been coming in through the day. But first, let me introduce all our special guests on the show. With me here in the Delhi studio, Mr. Manishankaraya, Senior Congress Leader. Also, Dr. Mohan Guruswamy, Distinguished Fellow of the Observer Research Foundation. Also joining us on the show, Mr. R.V.Kanoria, President of FICCI. We've also got Sonal Verma, India economist of Nomura, joining us from Mumbai. And Mr. Ajay Mahajan, founder and CEO of FICC Capital, joins us from Mumbai. I also spoke earlier with Mr. Nilotpal Basu, MP of the CPIM. That will be played out later. But let me first start by talking about inflation. And let's try and pull up that inflation chart for you to show you how it still continues to remain well above that uncomfortable 7% mark. At the same time, what we're seeing is that it has eased a bit. So where exactly is inflation headed? Will we see the Indian government finally taking control and bringing down inflation, or will we continue to rely on monetary policy or the Reserve Bank's tools to bring down inflation? Let me start by asking Mr. Manishankaraya, inflation at 7.25%, we're already celebrating because it's eased more than what we had expected, but it's clearly a number that the government should be very, very worried about.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure the government's worried about it. But I was a bit surprised that you're sort of distinguishing between monetary policy with the Reserve Bank of India and budgetary and fiscal policy with the government of India, because the Reserve Bank of India's role in regard to controlling inflation through monetary policy is a very, very important role, and it neither should be overplayed nor should it be underplayed, because inflation really is the worst possible tax and a regressive tax that you can impose upon the poor. And therefore, controlling inflation is a key objective. But it's not always in the hands of either the government or the Reserve Bank of India.
Why do you say so? Then what do we really rely upon? If you're saying the government has no control over it, the Reserve Bank has no control over it, then we cannot continue to go on with runaway inflation.
I didn't say had no control. Okay. I said don't have complete control over it.
Okay.
So since they don't have complete control over it, and since very often monetary policy can go in a direction opposite to the one which fiscal policy desires.
Right.
For example, on investment.
Right.
And I think we were very sensible in keeping interest rates high when inflation had really risen very, very high last year and into this year. And then inflation as a word is in a sense a meaningless abstraction, because its impact is different on different segments of our society. And some of it is very beneficial. For example, food inflation that comes out of raising the minimum support price is very good for farmers. And incidentally, therefore, for farm workers, and therefore not something to be sneered at. At the same time, one knows that the urban consuming class does feel very sensitive towards what food prices are.
And so that's why perhaps the sharp reaction to Mr. Chidambaram's comments, which he clarified.
Well, it was very similar to the sharp reaction to my comment when I was Minister of Petroleum. I said, one sari less, and you'll all be able to, pay what you should be paying for your LPG. What a rumpus it cost.
Right.
So I think we have to understand that the definition of a merit subsidy in the minds of the people of India is not the same as in the minds of economists, and therefore we have to be rather careful about the words we use. But the words we use do not change the objective situation. The objective situation is that there is inflation in our country, but it's much less than it has been at critical points in the past. For example, when VP Singh was running this economy, or even when Yashwant Sinha was running this economy. So these are problems. They have to be dealt with on a sectoral basis as well as a general basis. And I think taking it all together, we've not done too badly.
Would you agree, Dr. Guruswamy, that the government hasn't done too badly on inflation? Should we be all right with inflation at 7.25%?
Well, things could always be better, but
you agree
given the overall situation, I think they've handled it quite well. But there are, like Mani said, inflations and different kinds of inflation. Now, for the poorest of the poor, the basket of goods they buy, which accounts for 70% is food, inflation has been huge.
Right.
43% growth of inflation there. So for some people it's become very hurtful. And for the urban middle class, of course, everything, they're so used to being subsidized. They get subsidized water, subsidized electricity, subsidized sugar, subsidized milk, subsidized petrol, subsidized LPG, everything subsidized. 5 rupees more. They keep questioning, and there's a voice which is heard in our society. But the voice of the people who suffer is not heard. And I think there the government has done something in terms of Narega and PDS and things like that. There have been some benefits out there.
India's #1 news app just got even better. Download NDTV's new app. Fully optimized for Retina display. Full screen view. Faster response time. And Sudoku. NDTV's new iPad app. Download now.